chin beneath your shoes. The light is burning so soft. It's so cozy. We're still holding hands. What a crazy kind of chill. I feel winter's blues. I feel winter's grip around my heart. I feel winter's blue, winter's blue, winter's blue. I feel winter's here. Crazy
Hello, my name is Julie Larsen, and I'm reading from Die Handballdetektive, a children's book by the EHF. I'm reading from the chapter 4, so there's a little bit ahead you don't know yet about. And it's translated by Kath Pryke. Also, the book is available in German. So if you're not a native speaker, English speaker like me, we're in this together. If you're a native speaker, please be kind. A few more steps took Henry to the top of the hill right in front of the Lanxess arena. Nearby were some snack stands and booths where you could have a go at throwing games. He could smell fresh scraps again. Twister, that's his ferret, lifted his head and began to fidget under Henry's jacket. "Just a bit longer," said Henry, keeping his eyes firmly on the thief. Suddenly, he felt a surge of desperate anger. What should he do now? Of course, he could go up to the thief, grab his sleeve, and demand his things back. The problem was, the man didn't look like someone who was going to say, "Oh yes, dear boy, I deliberately stole your things, but of course, I give everything back to you." No, he was not going to give anything back, unless he had to. As Henry looked around, he felt a little lost. Crowds of people, couples, families, and friends were milling about happily, many of them wearing sport tops in their favorite team collars. A little way ahead, the thief bought a hot dog, paying with the money of his black shoulder bag. Henry gulped. Perhaps it was his money the crook was spending. Another painful wave of anger rose inside of him. How come the thief was able to stand there, calmly eating a hot dog, while he had to hide behind a group of visitors as if he were the thief? He clenched one hand into a fist while stroking Twister's head with the other. "Patience," he whispered to his ferret. "We'll get our stuff back, somehow." The thief was sauntering over the throwing booth. Oh no, was he actually going to play ball now? Henry tucked his arm around Twister and hid behind two teenagers who were strolling arm in arm towards the booth. Henry felt almost like a hunter stalking his prey as he slipped from one hiding place to another. He quietly joined the crowd surrounding the booth about 2 rows behind the thief. A blond boy who looked about 11 was throwing balls at a goal. The balls were smaller than volleyballs or footballs. Henry supposed they must be handballs. The boy was really talented, scoring one goal after another. The crowd clapped and cheered him on. He didn't really look like he would be good at sport, but he was really good at throwing. He rapidly scored 2 more goals, and the crowd broke into delighted applause. But wait, Henry had to concentrate on the thief. The boy's terrific throwing had almost distracted him. He looked at the crook again. He didn't seem to be paying much attention to the throwing. Instead, he was staring at a man in a red sport shirt. Henry noticed that the man's wallet was sticking out of the back pocket of his trousers. The thief edged closer to the man and stood casually with his hand near the wallet. Oh no, the thief was going to strike again, but this time Henry was going to stop him. He took a determined step forward to warn the man in the red top. But just at that moment, a woman came over to the man and put a hand on his shoulder. Quickly, the thief pulled his hand away, and the couple left together and strolled off towards the arena. At least the pickpocket hadn't succeeded this time. Henry smiled. But the thief was already pushing his way towards another visitor. He obviously stole whenever, wherever he could. It was easier to keep an eye on hundreds of ferrets than on this guy. Suddenly, Henry heard a voice next to him. "Wow, cool, is he a polecat?" Henry turned. The blond boy who had scored all the goals was standing in front of him, pointing at Henry's pet. "His name is Twister," explained Henry. "He's a ferret." He pulled Twister's lead out of his pocket and let him down onto the ground. The boy looked at the animal with interest. Henry would have liked to talk to someone, but he knew he mustn't let himself be distracted. "Aren't ferrets related to polecats?" asked the boy. "No idea," muttered Henry vaguely, still keeping his eyes glued to the thief. "I'm John," said the boy, introducing himself. "Well, my full name is Jonas, but everyone just calls me John." He held out his hand, and Henry shook it. Henry suppressed a little sigh. It was nice, just for a moment, to have the feeling that he wasn't alone. Also, he knew nothing about this boy other than he was really good at hurling balls at goals. He gave John a swift smile, and then his eyes searched out for the thief again. What was he planning to do next? John looked across at the man with the mustache as well. "Why do you keep looking at that man? Is that your dad?" he asked. "What? That crook his dad?" Henry shook his head vigorously. "That's good," answered John. "He looks a bit dodgy." Henry looked at John's pale face, his wire-framed glasses, and his freckly nose. Could he trust him? Tell him about the theft? But how would that help? The boy wasn't a policeman. He was only about the same age. John had an amused smile on his lips as he watched the man with the mustache. He pushed his glasses further up his nose and looked at Henry attentively. "So, why are you staking him out?" he asked. Staking him out? Henry had never heard that expression before. "It means observing, watching, following," explained John. "That's what a detective does to suspects or criminals." Henry couldn't believe it. It was almost as if John already knew what had happened just by watching. "The man nicked my rucksack, and just now he almost pinched someone else's wallet as well." "Cool, a multiple perpetrator," said John, and scrutinized the man with the mustache again. The thief was obviously getting bored after failing to find a new victim. He turned away from the booth and pushed through the crowd. John grabbed Henry's arm. "Watch out, he's off," he whispered. "Can I help to catch him?" His eyes shone with excitement. "Okay," Henry shrugged his shoulders. The whole thing gave him a queasy feeling in his stomach, but John seemed to be really enjoying it. Henry found that a bit bewildering. "Let's follow him, but carefully." John linked arms with Henry. "I'm a detective as well," he explained. "My specialty is secret codes, but I never had a real case before. That's why this is so awesome." They both followed the thief at a distance. Twister ran along beside them, sniffing here and there. The smell of crabs still hung in the air. People swarmed around cheerfully, going from one stand to the next. Music boomed out of a loudspeaker. Henry had never wandered around arm in arm with another boy, but at that moment it somehow felt nice and comforting. "The key to my flat is in the rucksack," he explained to John. "I can't get in without it. My mom is working the night shift at the hospital today. The thief also stole my clover-leaf keyring. That reminds me of my dad. His dad died when he was very young." John looked at him and nodded. "Don't worry, we don't let him get away." "He's really nice," thought Henry. John seemed to understand how important it all was to him. They both looked ahead again to make sure they didn't lose sight of the thief. who suddenly stopped at a drink stand. There was a short line in front of it. At the end of the line stood a woman in a summer dress. Her handbag was dangling from her shoulder. She had already opened her bag so that she could get to her purse more easily. The thief stood close behind her and peered into the open bag. Henry rolled his eyes. Oh no, he's at it again. John quickly pulled Henry behind a large tree. This is our observation post, he explained. Our what? Henry pulled Twister towards him so he couldn't be seen either. Who knows, said John. Perhaps we'll catch the thief red-handed. That would be cool. Cool was obviously John's favorite word. Carefully, John and Henry peeped out from behind the tree and watched the thief. As soon as he puts his hand into the lady's handbag, we'll jump out and grab him, said John cheerfully. Henry nodded. He thought the plan was a bit risky, but at least it would quickly attract the police. The thief reached out towards the lady's purse. We'll have him at a minute, crowed John, and got ready to leap. But at that moment, a tall man in a suit strode quickly over the drink stand and approached the man with the mustache from behind. He grabbed his shoulder and jerked him around until they were standing face to face. What do you think you are doing? He snarled at the thief, who hung his head guiltily. What is happening? Wondered Henry behind the tree. Oh no, the man is spoiling everything, complained John. But perhaps he's an undercover policeman. You know, a policeman who's not in uniform? The man in the suit pulled the thief away from the drink stand and, to the boy's surprise, over towards the tree. His face was turning red. He was obviously very upset. If you carry on like this, you'll have the cops here in no time, he growled at the thief. But boss, I just wanted to kill a little bit of time, whined the thief. He has a very high voice. The man with the red face interrupted him. You ruined the plan, you fool. Also, he didn't want anyone to hear what he was saying. He was too furious to keep his voice down. I don't think he's an undercover policeman at all, murmured John in disappointment. The man in the suit was now really fuming. You know we've got something big planned today, he hissed at the thief. This year, the spectators are going to get the shock of their lives. They won't have a clue what's happened, and we will be laughing all the way to the bank. He gave such an evil laugh that Henry couldn't stop himself from peering round the tree. There they were, a strange duo, one roaring and the other one trying to look innocent. Off to the arena, said the boss finally. I don't want my brilliant plan to go wrong. Today is the day I get rich. With these words, he grabbed the thief by the sleeve and yanked him towards the entrance. Henry stepped out from behind the tree. The two boys and the ferret followed the man at a distance. You see, thanks to our investigation, we already know a lot more about them. One of them is the boss, and the thief is just the accomplice. John smiled contentedly. But what now? There are some kind of games going on inside. We won't be able to get in. It's the Handball Champions League, explained John, and held up his tickets. The best handball teams in the whole of Europe are playing today and tomorrow for the Champions League trophy. Okay, whatever, sighed Henry, running his hand through the hair. The two men had already reached the entrance. The boss produced 2 tickets and they disappeared into the building. Oh no, he's getting away, exclaimed Henry. He couldn't see the thief's shiny hair or his light-colored coat anymore. He had escaped into the arena with his noisy friend, and Henry was stuck at the entrance. The chase was over. That was that. Now he could never get his cloverleaf keyring back. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, many thanks to Julie Larsson for not only reading, but for especially writing a book about handball. And I think today we will see that this place, Cologne, the Lanxess Arena, will be honored in several ways, not only by the best teams playing tomorrow, but in unveiling a monument, a statue for the Champions League here, which will be in the program in the evening. And also now the arena has their own book speaking about handball, about tickets, stealing of tickets. And yes, sometimes it will make sense to steal tickets because we are sold out. We are sold out now several times, and I can only report that the 10th edition of this VELUX EHF Champions League Final 4 will be another success story on the road of the Champions League. Yes, now to business. Welcome to this third edition of the European Handball Talks. I think it's almost a tradition that we combine our top-level product with some business questions, internal business questions, but also issues related to the outside business, to our partners. I would like to use the opportunity not only to welcome the crowd joining us here, also especially the president of the International Federation, who also takes interest in our doing. And I can assure you that all good ideas we have, we will try to implement, and we will try to take profit of what the IHF is doing. So looking for a even better cooperation in the future. Thank you for joining us. I think there cannot be any better place than Cologne and then the Final Four to have such gatherings. We are all not only celebrating, we are all not only fans of our sport, of handball, but it is also a place where those people meet once a year who are interested in handball, who are interested in the future of our sport. So it's not by chance that several meetings of our stakeholders are taking place, and that tomorrow a conference of presidents of all the 50 European nations will take place, where we will speak about the future, define the future. And part of all that is that we will speak about our DNA, the handball DNA, how do we see each other, how do we want to be seen in the future in order then to develop a master plan. So somehow the first part of today's meeting is exactly referring to this part, what is the DNA of European handball. In the second part, we will talk about the issue of workload on players, but more in the context of the environment of our sport. We are actively working on the development of our competitions. We work with the clubs, we work with the national federations, and all those stakeholders also provide an environment which makes it attractive for the players, makes it attractive for everybody to take part. So there is some logic in it that everybody being part of the game also wants to give input, bring in his or her opinion. And this is what we are going to do in the second part of the meeting. And last but not least, and I think this is a very good sign for the professionalization of our sport, we will have the awarding of the European handball managers, and we will do this on stage in a short ceremony. It also shows that there is huge interest in staying in handball. This holds true for many of us. Playing handball is one thing, working for handball afterwards is another thing. So what we have to do, and this is one of our major tasks for the future, to give people a working field, to work on dual careers for the players and all that. So there's, the awarding at the end is a part which shows our interest in that. Last but not least, it's my job to introduce the moderator of the first session. This is Thomas Schöneich, EHF Communications Department, working in sport, also working as a journalist for 15 years, working for the EHF since 2012, and really being an expert. And he will moderate this first session. He will also introduce the participants in the little workshop, may I call it. I do not want to forget that this book, which is currently edited in German only, Die Handballdetektive, is available for a donation after the session. And I think knowing about the growing interest, it's climbing up in the list, we will also see it sooner or later in English for the whole handball community overall Europe. So thank you very much, and Thomas, please take over.
Thank you very much, Michael. Very warm welcome also from my side here to the Flora in Cologne. Michael mentioned the sold-out VELUX EHF Final4. I think we can safely say that also this event is sold out. So it's a pleasure to see this here at the third edition of the European Handball Talks. Michael said that we're going to learn more about the DNA of handball in this first part today. Brand building in the digital age is the official title we gave it. And before we start, I just want to provoke you to a tiny little thought experiment. Like, think about how you came here, how you arrived here. How many touch points, how many a time have you been exposed to the VELUX EHF Champions League? Was it at the airport when you saw the LED screen? Was it at a shuttle you took here? Was it when you came here? Was it the flags you saw on one of the Cologne bridges? All of these obviously are parts of what we do here, so to say. All of these are touch points. And you could have tweeted about this, you could have posted it on Instagram, you could have sent a photo to a friend, to a journalist. So I think that shows you that building a brand in the digital age has kind of become an everyday, probably an every minute business. And I'm very happy that for today's keynote, that I can welcome here on stage Michael K. Rasmussen, Chief Marketing Officer for VELUX. He's been for 17 years. About a year and a half ago, he founded his own company, Purpose at Heart, and he will tell you more about brand building in the digital age. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Thomas. I suppose with a title like that, the first question should actually be, does digital really impact handball at all? It's a very physical sport. It's real time, it's for real people, and there's really not a lot of digital on the face of handball. But on the other hand, you guys have developed the eyeball, the chip inside the ball, and tracking the ball, and even tracking players as well. You have a host of different statistics that you provide for the players and for the audiences, both during the games and after the games. You have an extensive presence in social media, different social media engagements. And you have EHF TV, and I could go on with many, many different examples of places where handball has actually already taken digital steps. So whatever we are asking ourselves, digital will happen. It is happening also to handball. And therefore, let me share a few facts on digital with you. In the wider European room, we are more than 800 million people. 80% of us actually have internet access. We have 1.1 billion mobile connections. We have more mobile connections than we have people. We spend, maybe not all of us, but on average, we spend more than 8 hours on media consumption every day. Two of the major components of that media consumption is internet and TV. Actually, they're more than half of that. And today, they are equal. We spend as much time getting information from the internet as we do from TV. And if you go on to social media, today there are 448 million social media users in Europe, and 85% of those users are mobile. So the world is changing. In fact, it has already changed because it impacts all of us every day. And this is your future audience. This is the people that you would like to bring into your community, into your world, the world of handball in the future. And if you look at those in isolation, the 18 to 24-year-olds, as this is, they actually use internet 9 times more often than they do TV. They spend every week 3 hours, 25 minutes on online games, also known as esports, at least a substantial part of that. And just as a reference, they only spend 2 hours and 33 minutes watching traditional sports. So in terms of time, you are outcompeted. They join fitness centers, but they don't join sports clubs. That's how it is. And that's while your audience is sitting on the stairs there, well, then the arenas are emptied. And eventually, the handball community may end up looking like this. But on the other hand, there are also some opportunities or challenges depending on how you see that. Digital and the use of digital creates some new challenges. Using digital usually means you're passive. It does create problems of issues with physical health, obesity among children and young people, and for some of us also later in life. It does create a wave of solitude, of isolation among young people. Young people feel more alone than they have ever done. And depending on how you look at that, if you're a young person, that's definitely a threat, the threat of obesity and isolation. But if you're handball, it may also be an opportunity in that sense. Bottom line is that you compete with a lot of other activities, and the way you compete is you compete for their time. That's what it's all about. If we try to map the competition, you could sort of do it on 2 dimensions. You could probably do it on more, but we've been looking at 2 dimensions, the personal or analog versus digital, and the dependent versus independent. And if you try to apply a few of the sports across those 2 axes, then there is a continuum from one end to the other here. And we also have to add the digital parts that are also increasingly present in this competition. They are all competitors of going out and playing handball. The esports corner is predicted to become larger than soccer in a not so distant future. And they are probably also going to try to move towards more dependent areas in the future. And at the end of the day, probably your competition is actually fitness memberships, kids going to independent sports, not necessarily in the fitness center, but doing things on their own rather than being part of a community and doing things as a team. And that is also a considerable challenge. So perhaps the future competition, the future red ocean where people will really fight is somewhere in the cross-section between being digital and being in the real world, if I may say so, and towards the independent side, because we become more and more independent, less dependent on each other. And where does that leave handball? Well, there may, of course, be the opportunity that you can join the fight and fight with others who are already good at something, or you can build on your strengths, on your DNA, and try to make a space, an area for yourself where you actually have the upper hand. And if you have to do that, well, then, of course, firstly, you need to understand your audiences. Where do your audience come from? And how do they enter your community, your ecosystem? First horizon, of course, is the players. If there are no players, there is no future for handball, and the recruitment of new players need to be an important task for the future of handball. And of course, you go through a lifetime as a handball player, some even ending up in Cologne on a nice spring weekend and playing the best handball you can possibly get. The second horizon is the fan horizon, the people who are celebrating handball and who will also be here for the whole weekend. And finally, the third horizon, the associates, all the people that help financially and certainly many other ways. It could also be the volunteers of the local handball match, all the people who are helping making handball happen. We are all part of the wider handball community. And how do we then define that DNA or that community? Well, firstly, we need to know the audiences, get familiar with them, and more importantly, for them to be familiar with the nature of handball and how to describe that. Well, that description, firstly, you need to find something that they really love, and you need to touch them or reach them on a purpose level so that they understand, why should I spend my time with my friends playing handball rather than the alternative time consumption. It's important for the handball community that people understand that handball has pretty deep roots. People have been, maybe they didn't call it handball back in the Roman times, but at least handball has a heritage of more than 100 years as a sport, and the understanding of where it comes from and how it works. The understanding of the game, I think that's pretty well established, but also the understanding of handball throughout the 20th century and what role it has played and does play in community. And last but not least, the reach that handball has obtained in this day and age. And the definition of that, to go further, needs a recipe. It needs a platform or a compass that can help define the products and services which handball is at the end of the day also a gathering of products and services, to define the engagement with the audiences, to describe the organizational behavior within the handball community, and last but not least, also to describe the role of handball in the wider society. And to do that, the blue buttons on this model is what we have used to describe that. First, the horizontals. In the center, the core purpose of handball, what we do, and to describe that. On your right, the perception, how we would like people to see handball and the handball community. On the left, the culture, how we see ourselves, who are we as handball players and which values do we share. And on the vertical part, the horizontal part describes the relationship within and around the handball community. The vertical part describes the direction, the reason for being, raison d'être, why we are here, why we play handball, and why we engage in the handball community. The future, where we are going, and setting a vision for the future, where to go to in the next steps. And with that, you can actually describe in a few words what is the handball DNA, what is handball about. The core purpose, the what we do, is described as we play handball for fun, friendship, and athletic tough competition. Join, watch, and visit. If we add the perception and the culture, how would we want to be seen by others? We would like to be seen as an intense and unique entertainment. Certainly we will see some of that this weekend. performed by outstanding all-round athletes in an intelligent teamwork, which takes a lot of skill, and also as a sport and as a community that has a social responsibility, a responsibility for each other and for society. The way we see ourselves is as active, likable ambassadors, open and honest and fair in our dealings, courageous and clever, both on the arena and outside the arena, and as contributing to the futures, as contributors to the future. And if we add the vertical axis, the reason why we exist as members of the handball community, the passion for handball is part of all of us, and it is our mission to pass on the sports to future generations in an even better state than we received it, to grow handball and bring it to the next level. And where are we going? Well, we want to be the most attractive indoor sport and grow our community. That is the DNA that we are aiming for. And how to do that? Words are okay. You can describe your intent and your intentions, of course, but it's the actions that really count for where you're going. It would probably carry too far to talk about everything that should be done, but just to highlight a few, we need to bring the handball relevance to the people where they are. Relevance also in the sense that handball, I think we know how to play handball, but how is it relevant to young people who may actually rather look at fitness? I'm not suggesting that's the solution, but fitness has run away with CrossFit, for instance. Actually, handball masters all the physical disciplines of a good health. Why is there not a product called Handball CrossFit or something similar to meet your audience halfway or 3/3 of the way of where they are, and maybe they start with the CrossFit and they end up as a left wing. The second thing is proximity. Thomas talked about touch points. I don't mean we should all go to London. I mean, we should look at it as touch points, that we meet the audiences where they are. And it's like a journey to understand how they move through the ecosystem. You may both be a player and a fan, or you may be an associate at one point, but a fan at another point. Understanding all the touch points and how to get there is a challenge that must also be met. You need to be omnipresent and to be everywhere for your audience. And I have to say, I think you are today. In fact, you're probably somewhat scattered in that sense. You're in a lot of places and they are not necessarily connected on the same line. And there's a challenge there. You need to create outreach, go beyond the handball game itself. It could be outreach in the sense of what's the contribution of handball to society. It might be on physical health. It might be on contributing to reducing the solitude problems of young people, creating community, creating friends. It might be on gender equality, or it might be on leadership. In fact, looking at the handball community, it's interesting to see how many leadership skills are gathered within the handball community and how well handball is grooming leadership skills. And maybe even to link it up to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, to make it clear to the outside world how handball contributes to the whole society and not only to the handball community. And then the more household ones, to be consistent, to make sure that everything works for you in the right way, and to make sure that the different visual presentations and the different actions you do all are part of building the same brand, contributing to the same DNA. And last but not least, being able to measure identifying the good. After all, handball is also more fun when you count the goals and you find out who won. It's the same as building a brand. It's more fun if you can see you make a difference and you can set targets for where you want to go for the next match, also building a brand. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. I think it's time. I think there's a lot of things that Michael already mentioned, so it's time for our first panel. So actually, I would like to welcome him back on stage. It was about fitness, wasn't it?
That's it.
Yeah. Next time we have a handball that you have to catch, like when you have to.
Where do you want me?
I think if you just take the center seat there. And I would also like to welcome on stage as our second participant, Marco Klevenhagen. Marco Klevenhagen is the Managing Director and Chief Editor of the Special Interest magazine Sponsors. And in that role, he also organizes the Spobis, which is the Europe's biggest sports business event. Perfect, that's your seat. Excellent, thank you, Marco. I would also like to welcome on stage Sasha Kojic. Sasha is the owner of the SN1 consulting agency. And in that respect, he's been consulting and accompanying the EHF in their latest tender process. Welcome, Sasha.
Hi, Sasha.
I would also like to welcome Xavi O'Callaghan here on stage for this panel. Xavi, long-time FC Barcelona player, Spanish international, and for about a year, he has taken on a whole new horizon and taken over FC Barcelona's business in the United States as managing director. And I would like to welcome on stage David Slezak, managing director of EHF Marketing.
Hi.
So I started the first bit with an experiment. I want to start this as a bit of an icebreaker with an experiment as well. You see little pens and pieces of paper in front of you. I think the a key part in Michael's presentation was talking about the core, how the core serves as an inner compass for the company itself, but also as an outer compass to kind of define to the external people, who are you as a company? And with Xavi as a representative from FC Barcelona, we have a representative of probably the biggest sports brand, one of the biggest sports brands in Europe present here. A sports brand that has been existing for, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're celebrating 120 years this year.
Right.
So I just would like every participant here, just grab a pen and one of these speech cards and write down one word, one sentence. What does FC Barcelona mean for you?
Thanks.
Yeah, Xavi, of course you have to write it too.
That's unfair. That's unfair, actually.
Yeah. I have too many words.
Can you write two so I take one?
That's a good one. I have to keep that in my mind for my...
So right, all these ideas are free of charge. I think, David, you were first. I think you have to read out first. We start from left all the way here to the right.
So I have to reveal it.
Yeah.
It's Camp Nou.
Camp Nou, the stadium. Sasha?
I have Messi.
Messi.
For me, it's a model. A model means,
okay, yeah.
something that you have to follow.
Yeah, yeah.
You want to be like the club.
Yeah.
I wrote excellence.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I wrote Mesque und Club.
This is very interesting. So we have the stadium, I think that stands for all the excitement. We have probably, arguably, the world's most famous footballer. We have a persona, so to say, if I can translate this. We have an adjective that kind of describes what this club is about. And we have probably the slogan that everyone identifies with this club. 5 different people, excuse me, 5 different approaches. So from a brand perspective, I mean, is that good? Wouldn't it be better if everyone had written the same, Michael?
Well, I would say they point to the same direction, which is good. If you were only one word, then your profile might be a little bit thin. But of course, you need to manage what is it about. But if you're alive, you are more than just one adjective or one statement. You need to put some meat on the bone, so to speak. And I think we are all moving in the same direction when it comes to the Barcelona brand. Yeah. I think.
Xavi, can you give us a tiny bit of insight how you live the brand inside Barcelona?
Well, Barcelona is not just a club, it's becoming an entertainment brand. So the club is evolving to a different stage, and it's trying to compete in the entertainment world. And this is a huge change, and it's really difficult to do that because you are competing with the best brands in the world. And this is where we are right now in that process, trying to create something that transcends the sport and becomes something else related to the entertainment. So it's a way to attract young people. We agree with your analysis, is exactly what's going on. If you want to get the younger audiences, you need to do something different. Sport is not enough. And you have to create content. It's very important, the storytelling, in which way you engage with the new audiences, how can you reach them, and we all the brands are investing a hell of money trying to create that content that links them with the young audiences, and there is a battle in that creation of content, and this is where you can make a difference. And we are focusing, where we are targeting a lot of our efforts in that way, because we strongly believe that doing that we could make that step forward and become more than a club, more than a brand, more than a club, because it became an entertainment brand, which is what we are looking for.
David, I think what Xavi describes is obviously a process of redefinition, a process of change. But then we're talking here about a brand that's been in existence for 120 years, and that is also like so strongly established. Now, when we look at European handball, EHF marketing also in this process of redefinition, but much younger, not even 30 years old. What are the challenges here at the moment for you, for a European sports platform?
Is it exactly what Xavi said? Handball is part of sport, and sport is part of entertainment. And this entertainment is this industry is theoretically infinite. There are so many new inventions, so many new sports, esports, but also so many new formats, which all compete. And Michael said this, which all compete for the time of the audience. And this is something which we have to understand in our sport. If we have a certain understanding for being not the competitor of another sport, but a competitor in this or a participant in this entertainment industry, then you have understood one of the main challenges, and you can adapt to this. The other thing is obviously the digital development. You called it the touch points. How often are we able to touch the consumer, the fan, many more times than 20 years ago, where there was no digital? And then it's about this conversation with the community, with the fan. If you want to guide the conversation, if you want to lead it, then you have to understand what is demanded, what is needed, and only if you understood what is needed, then you can offer those things. This is I call it the global challenges in the digital world. And then you're coming down to earth, to handball, and I do not mean this negative, but if we go to handball, we have a clear heritage, we have a culture, we can be very proud of this culture. We cannot change it, we cannot change our heritage, but we can work on it for the future and to adapt it to the future needs. One of the main things, and this is something which we are often discussing internally, one of the main and major things for me is it's a team sport. We are working as a team. The team is always the star in handball, and it's much more than in other team sports, like in football, where you have some superstars. We have them in handball as well, but for me, still the team is the decisive factor. And then we have a specific in handball that it's still very local in many ways. When it comes to sponsorship, when it comes to a brand, there are many famous villages, especially here in Germany, villages who have a strong brand, but a very local brand. Those and bringing together those challenges, the global things, and our own challenges. This is to find the balance. This is what we have to work on.
Michael, when David talks about these challenges, if I understood you correctly, the compass to guide you through these challenges should be the core, so to say, as the leading example, so to say, what you should do, so to say. Can you just to go back to the start, and I think that's important here to understand how this score that you described was developed.
Over winter, we did a number of workshops, which I was fortunate enough to facilitate with the management of EHF and EHF marketing, and used all the different data that are available from the past, I think even 6, 7, 8 years, and crunched them and boiled it the way you boil a good soup. It has to be content or a good sauce into the central essence of what it should be.
Now we're talking about brand building in the digital age, and when you look at it and the way it's phrased, it doesn't really sound much digital, very digital. It's more like a bit going back to the roots. Was that kind of necessary for you to kind of start where handball is rooted?
I don't think you cannot escape your roots in any way. And even though digital on the surface is a lot about technology, it's really not about technology. Technology is an enabler. It's the way you connect. But your goal is not to be connected on the right protocol. Your goal is to be connected with the people at the other end, and to have something in common with with the people you're sharing with. The technology is the enabler. It's not the goal itself. So actually, I think if you can exploit technology in a clever way, then it can give you even some advantages to build a bridge on having a relationship with others.
First time impression is always important. Xavi, when you saw this handball core, when you read it for the first time on the screen, what was your impression? You being very deeply rooted into in the handball community.
You know, for me, when you have I have seen the development of handball. You know, I remember when I was a player, and it was so different. It's the same sport, but it's a different thing. You cannot compare that moment, the level of details, of branding. There was nothing. It was just handball, the game itself, and nothing else. Sorry. And nowadays, excuse me. And nowadays it's exactly the opposite. You are doing things like this. You are creating an event. You are adding value to the concept, because it's the way, and coming back to what I said before, to create content. Content that you can sell to each segment of the population that you want to attract. And this is the key thing. And using these kind of elements, you are able to create the story and to communicate in the way that you want to do it. And this has changed, you know. And if you don't move in that direction, you are lost. Because all the other sports, all the e-sports, all the gaming is moving through this direction, and it's unstoppable. It's no way to stop about that. You cannot compete against the wave that is coming against you. You have to use the strength of the wave and go with the wave, and this is what we are doing. So I think that the EHF marketing is doing an amazing job, and it's this event is a perfect example of what we are doing. But we have to go further, and the only way to do it is just keeping our minds open and don't think about what we were doing in the past, evolving, and be ready to be part of the new technologies, new ways of doing, trying to involve kids in what we are doing. It's a lot of different things that makes you or gives you the opportunity to compete with all the other sports and with the other industry of entertainment.
I'll try and be a bit like advocatus diaboli here. And Marco, one could argue maybe, yeah, we can do this, we can do that. There's many things we can do, but in the end, football will prevail. You know, football is like so dominant. You know, there's a huge cake, and that football eats, and there's a lot of smaller sports that fight for the little crumbs that are left over. If you have a strong core and if you have a strong message, could that help to kind of get? I mean, don't try to reinvent the wheel, but at least get a few more crumbs of these.
Well, of course it does. I mean, the sports business market is growing since 25 years and extremely well. And it's true, the football probably gets of it 80% or something like that. But there's still 20% of a billion market. So we shouldn't complain and don't trap all the time like, oh, what is football doing and stuff like that. It reminds me on the World Cup here, what we had in Germany. And every, I don't know, second sentence was like, it's not like in football we're doing this. So don't tell the people what are you doing, just do it, and the people will recognize it. And but back to your question, I think, of course, brands helps. It doesn't matter which sport we're talking about. If we say NBA, if we say golf Augusta tournament, if we say the Strive in skiing or whatever, these all are big brands. Even if I don't follow these kind of sports, I know what it is and I know where it is, and I have a picture of it in my mind. So yes, it's about brand building. It's not just about, let's say, put a jingle on it or advertising slogan, but it's the bread and butter what you have to bring in. And the rest you have to figure out what you have to do for the classical media that does it work. Let's say you need some recognition factors. Big club brands like FC Barcelona or Paris Saint-Germain are helping. With all the respect, it makes it much easier if you have Festprim or Flensburg, where the people are asking which country could that be. But otherwise, it's the roots, it's like that. We shouldn't complain. And we have all these examples also in football. We have Dortmund, we have Manchester, and they are not the biggest cities on the earth, and everybody knows them well. So this is not the biggest point. I think the athletes could be more get in focus. It drives me crazy all the time when I'm a handball fan and when people, sports interesting people asking me around, what's the name again of the guy with the mohawk cut? Is he still playing? It's like, Jesus Christ. It's, by the way, it's Pascal Hens and he's not playing for, I don't know, 10 years probably. Or the other guy with a tattoo on it. Yeah? That can't be. There are so many good guys out there. And they are intelligent, good-looking guys. They're healthy, they're fit, they're funny. So do something with them and put them more on the focus. That would be helpful, probably. And then maybe the live event characters we have. I mean, World Cup, Olympic Games, the Final Fours in Germany and here. That they have massive followers actually on these days. The problem is we don't get them in the league games or in the Champions League games. There's a really big difference. I think in the World Cup we had about 10 million viewers on TV. And of course it's something special, it's a special event, but the gap is too big. The gap is like when we have a good handball game in the Bundesliga, well now it's on pay TV on Sky, but before it was like maybe 200,000, 500,000 spectators. That's not enough. So these are the questions that we have to figure out what we can do better. But at the end of the day, yeah, it helps when the people know what's all about and what handball is staying for.
Sasha, in this tender process that you accompanied over the past 2 years, 2017, 2018, what are the assets that you identified for handball to be successful on the market?
Well, before answering the question, I must talk a little bit about the media markets and the developments. And it's actually interesting because we heard so many interesting things about how media is changing going forward, or actually changing and going forward. Michael Rasmussen's presentation about 50% of the consumption is already online or digital, or clubs becoming media houses. I mean, those are really significant changes and movements in media markets. But the key thing and the main thing, and at the same time, opportunity and threat to many of the rights holders and to sports organizations like the European Handball Federation, is really the change in consumption. Media consumption has changed in a way that there is no one size fits all anymore. It's one size fits one. So i.e., if you ask yourself, how do you consume media back home, you would think of, okay, I watch my Netflix series, I have my Amazon Prime subscription, and I watch one or the other OTT service that I have in my market. But none of you would say, I have my favorite series on, I don't know, channel 6 at 8:15. This is not existing anymore.
Except Tatort.
Except Tatort. But this is very, very local German, Marco, no, isn't it?
8:15 on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Don't call anyone in Germany.
You obviously have those appointments to views, which, by the way, 90% are sports and not Tatort, not serious. But what does it mean for a sports organization? So, and this was actually the gut feeling we started with when we were preparing the tender process. We had a good gut feeling about handball because, I mean, I work with EHF and EHF marketing since more than 10 years now. And I was kind of part of this development, and I saw, okay, there must be more potential than is being exploited now. And when we took a look at the numbers, we said, okay, this is one of the most followed sports in Europe. This is one, when it comes to participation, one of the largest sports in Europe. And this is one of the sports where you have the potential to create fans and super fans after football. So there must be definitely a lot more potential. And this is why we strongly believed in it. And now answering the question, what is the key asset? This is the asset. The followers, the fan base that the sports has, and the potential to create super fans, because super fans are the one he's looking for in the US, because those are the fans you can monetize via media, via marketing, via merchandising, and so on. And this was basically the first tender I'm aware, at least, in the media and marketing industries, which was designed in a way that we were targeting a community rather than trying, to create this regular competition between agencies or media companies. This was not the intention. We really targeted the community, and we really had a bold target when it comes to the commercial outcome of this tender. And luckily it kind of worked pretty well.
And is it now the next step to produce like customized content for this audience, as you say, like it's not in a one size fits all, but a one size fits one kind of approach?
Well, and this is the big job that EHF and EHF marketing will now have to do with their partners Infront and the Zone, is actually communicating with this community and with this audience, and is actually building this audience further through all those new channels that we have. It's not even new, but through all the channels that we have, and probably through all the channels that were not, probably used in the best possible way, let's put it this way, in the past years. But there is a huge potential to grow.
Xavi,
may I jump in?
Yeah, sure.
What do you think, Sasha? Can make the Zone the difference? What we know for years. The special, in Germany, the channels what we have, what broadcasting handball.
Yeah.
And now with the Zone comes up a totally new player with a totally new business model. What do you think? Can they pick up the handball-based fans, what you described?
Yes, they can, and they can much easier than it was the case in the past. Because if you take a look at in the past, so imagine you wanna start a media business, you wanna start a broadcasting business, so you need to apply for a license, you need to book the segment, you need to build the channel, you need to have the editorial stuff, and then you need to find a third-party distribution partner to get your channels out in the homes, okay? And this was always the key point. So those first 4 points, easy to deal with. It's like, normal operational stuff, but get a partner at good commercial condition to get your content out. This is not not necessary anymore. You can go direct to consumer, you can communicate via different platforms, and I even think that, I mean, the zone is a bridge offering to the market in a way, because I think that going forward 5, 6, 7, 8 years from now, there will be a totally different monetization in media. We will monetize the follower, we'll monetize the fan, rather than monetizing license fees from the markets. This is my opinion. This is why, yeah, there is a lot of opportunity, especially for handball in the future in the media markets.
Xavi?
Sorry, one thing. I fully agree with you. You have to engage, you have to be fan-centric, you have to understand what they want, and when you have the segmentation, you can monetize them. And you know that some of they are willing to pay for what they are watching. So you have to attack to this segment.
And now you are, I mean, as Barcelona, you are monetizing them with your club TV offerings and things like that. So it's like secondary monetization. But I do even believe, and it's actually a successful business model for the big brands, but I do even believe that going forward, years from now, 5, 6, 7 years probably from now, you will be able to have this as a first step monetization.
It's upsells and cross sales. So you can start selling content, TV content, but you can sell the T-shirt, you can sell the experience in Barcelona, you can sell special events for them. So you can do a lot of different things because you have the customer in your environment all the time, and you can move different, bring them different opportunities to spend money with you. But this is the last stage. You know, we as a handball, we are far away from that. Even Barcelona is not doing exactly that at that moment. This is the vision that we have for the future. This should be done in the future, but it's not where we are right now for sure.
But is that also the vision that you as FC Barcelona entered the US market with? And can you kind of maybe give us, like, after having been like 1 year there, like 3 lessons learned?
No, it's different.
It's too early to say.
Step by step. We were talking about global vision.
Yeah.
But in the USA, we want to enlarge our fan base. This is very important for us. And digital is the way to do it because the asset is in Barcelona, which is 7,000 kilometers away from New York. So it's really difficult to sell something that is happening so far away. And the only way to do it is digital. But what happened? You cannot create digital content in Barcelona for all over the world. It's different, the content that you have to create for Asia, for China, than from the USA, because the sense of humor is different, the approach of the fans are different. So it's very, you need a global but local approach to the market in order to enlarge your fan base. This is one of the things we are doing there, but we are doing business development, we have academies all over the Americas, we have the foundation program, so we are doing a bunch of things in the USA. But the most important thing is to enlarge the fan base, because this, at the end, will bring us more money, more options to do things, more options to get better players, to keep fighting for the best possible trophies, and this is the wheel, going on.
Marco, when we're talking about producing content, reaching another audience, we're almost always talking about the younger audience. We're hardly ever talking about that we want to reach the 65-year-olds, 70-year-olds, so to say. But obviously, the young audience is the key target group. What are the conditions for reaching these millennials, this young audience group? And are they really the only target group we should focus on?
Yeah, I don't want to focus that on the millennials, just say younger people.
Yeah.
Well, we mentioned that a little bit already. What changed is that we have to pick them up where they are in their own natural environment, and don't expect that we put something on a Sunday evening and maybe they will find us. We have to find them. That's probably the biggest change. But it also comes with massive opportunities. It was never so inexpensive to do your own content. It was never so easy to spread your content and distribute your content. You can be your own media house if you want to. This is actually the biggest advantage sports content, sports federation, sports leagues have so far. It was never been before. But I think we have to learn it, that we don't put all our hope on TV stations or broadcasters, like, I'm sorry for criticizing, but what the Handball Bundesliga have done. I mean, in the last TV deal they had, they have a really good deal with Sky on pay TV and with the German first program ARD. And that's good. They're really good partners, no doubt about that. I don't want to blame it on them. But as you mentioned already, they're reaching an old target group, and I'm sorry to say that, they're going to die quickly. And we find the same people in the arenas of handball. So the massive problem with handball is to find younger people. And what the Handball Bundesliga did, and I spoke with them with some stakeholders on them, said, don't give them money what you get more now, they have more budget than before of that deal. Don't give it to the clubs, they will give it to the player and agents. So keep your money, centralize it, produce your own OTT or produce your own social media or whatever, and try to get involved with younger people. And they didn't. They just get the money, bring it to the club. It changed nothing for them. The whole league got, I think it was about 250,000 euros per season more, and nothing changed in that league. And in the Champions League, the biggest clubs are far away with their budget anyway. So I think, to make a compliment to the EHF, they're doing good when they focus on the new media stuff and the social media and the OTT platform. That's by far one of the best ways with what you can do to reach younger people.
Yeah, Michael.
I think on the question of why focus on young people is that it's a life cycle. You need to address young people because they don't have a preference beforehand. You don't address a 55-year-old who has loved football all his life, because he will stay with football. And therefore you need this life cycle, and it corresponds with also making sure that there are players for the future, and the fans grow from maybe the local club into understanding handball at a wider perspective. So you need to start with the young people, and on the media side, I think we should also bring in the influencers and take a look at this phenomena that a 12-year-old can create his own following of millions. An interesting category for that is to look at something like fantasy literature. There are influencers out there that have more than 20 million followers.
Yeah, and that means you can't expect to get young people directly to a live game or live event or whatever. You have to pick them with snippets, with highlights, summaries, with I don't know, with stories behind the scenes or whatever it can be. And when you get them at the hook, they will come by themselves to get a real client, to stay close to you. But we can't expect to just put something live on TV on a Sunday afternoon and expect, where are the young people? That makes no sense.
You mentioned the live event, and I actually want to go to the live event in the arena, in the stadium. Maybe a quick question to you, David and Sasha. What role does the live event play in this whole kind of thinking about producing digital content for a younger audience? And so, and I have to quote that from the top of my head. I think what the Sun wrote after the EuroLeague final in Baku, I think they kind of literally wrote, "This has sucked the elixir of life out of football. This was a game without any atmosphere. This was a game without any kind of support. This wasn't a real football match anymore." Kind of, is that, Paul, is that kind of Sun language? Yeah, good.
No, actually, this is very, very and most important in the whole story. And we, first of all, we shall be lucky that we are getting so many compliments from external experts outside the handball world. Maybe we shall be a little bit more self-confident when it comes to producing or performing ourselves in the media landscape. And a part of that, away from the playing code, finding friends as well. So this is a good thing. But in all those discussions and in all those, there are so many arguments and there are so many facts which are true. And I think we all agree, and most of the participants will agree here. But we shall not forget the live event. We shall not forget the match in the arena. And then, thanks God, it's once a year. In the EHF and the EHF marketing, we have the Final Four phase, because this brings us back to work in the arena, to work with the people there, bring them in, and to give them the entertainment on site, because this, call it incentivizing the spectators. If we do not have spectators in the arenas, then we can discuss everything around it, but it will not help. So the bringing people to the arena still is the most important thing. And yes, it works for the Final Fours, it works for the top matches, and Marco said it, it needs to be prolonged, extended to all matches. This would be the best case. It never will be possible, but yeah. And this is where we need to put emphasis on, and we shall not forget that this still is something without spectators, we cannot survive.
I think from a media perspective, sport is life, and this is a main USP of sport. So it should not be disregarded at all, because sport gives you, beside Tato and Marco, the only appointment to view that you can create. And this is why people come at a certain time, either to the arena or in front of the screen to watch it live. Obviously, and again, I'm emphasizing on this is a USP that has a lot of value to media companies across the globe. Okay, this is just very important to understand. The other thing is talking about delayed content, clip content, highlight content, in whichever way it is being designed and put together, is extremely important to communicate with the community. So, and this is why I also think that going forward, the models, all those super exclusive rights acquisition models will change, not today, but in a few years' time, because you just cannot fence your product. It doesn't make any sense anymore to fence your product when you look at how content is being consumed. I have 2 little kids at home, and if in a few years' time, if they would ask me, can I watch this and that handball game? And I would tell them, no, because I don't have a DAZN subscription, it's live on DAZN, they will probably be looking at me and say, I don't get what you say. Because they are used to consume everything everywhere. And on demand, when they want. The only thing they have to get up in the morning is if when they want to watch a skiing race or to sit in front of the TV in the afternoon when they want to watch a handball game. And I think it's very important to point this out. It's a USP of sports.
Mm. If live plays such an important role, something that is obviously rooted so deeply is like the core of sports. Michael, trying to draw another parallel and going back a bit in history, you as a chief marketing officer of VELUX, you obviously built the brand of VELUX, and you accompanied the title sponsorship that VELUX has with the EHF Champions League. Are there parallels that you can draw between VELUX's success and something the EHF can learn from this for the next 10 years?
In terms of structure, absolutely. I think part of the VELUX brand has a very long history, and a big contribution to it is the product itself, because originally the biggest branding event you could make was bring the VELUX product next to the competition, and it would be a no match. It's not like that today. There are many good brands out there, but VELUX still prevails, among others because of a very high awareness for a building component. I don't think you know of any other physical windows that you can name by name, actually. It's the only brand you will probably know, and it's one of the most, if not the highest awareness level of a building component brand in the whole world. And the parallel in that is that handball may be known, and perhaps one of the learnings for handball going forward is that you also need the familiarity. People need more than the game. They need to understand more about the players, see more of life of handball to bring that closer, which is also part of what the VELUX Champions League sponsorship has been about, having every year 5,000-6,000 customers exposed to handball in the company of VELUX. That's a huge opportunity hospitality-wise.
David, so many inputs, so many different directions to take. What do you make out of it? What are for you the next steps?
As you said, and each and every day you get another input, and it's very difficult to have the right path or the right track, and that's why we are going back to our roots and to try to establish and to build up a very clear handball core, having our propositions for different target groups, showing our culture, and as I said, maybe being a little bit more proud of it. Obviously, using the digital opportunities on a sports-related way, gaining data, players tracking, all those keywords. On the other side, on a revenue-related way, so we keyword digital marketing. We need to earn money at the one hand. Content is what we heard so much today. Specifically produced for the target groups, for the different target groups. I mean, coming back to the very beginning, it's not by coincidence that we are testing a kids book. How does this perform? Is this something which will accept it on the market? Will the kids like it, the younger audience? And yeah, coming back to the people in the arenas. This is what we need to, being the European Federation, where we need to work with the stakeholders, with the clubs, with the federations, that people, together with them, that people are coming and joining the arena.
Well, we started this discussion with a little game. Obviously, we're going to end with a little game as well. So if you just keep this, and I will ask each and every one of you to complete this sentence that is written on there. If you could just hand this over.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
So I can see the little clock here winding down. It's already red, so I think I have to like kind of hurry up. This is, oh, Scott, excuse me, that was like a font 12 size or so. I think. So let me just see. Who's still writing? Who looks? Sasha, you look ready to go. So you say, I'll just read it out. So in order to stay relevant, and please, just like 1 or 2 sentences to complete this. In order to stay relevant on the sports rights market for the next 10 years and beyond, handball needs to
embrace the change, the new opportunities in the media markets.
Marco's still writing. Michael, ready to go?
Yeah, I'm ready to go.
If
I could only give one single brand advice to the EHF, it would be actually 2 things, coherence and consistency. Align coherence in the sense that align and connect all the good initiatives and ideas that are within the handball community, and consistency, repeating it until you get noticed.
Xavi?
A strong sports brand for me is a brand that transcends or goes beyond the sport.
Okay, perfect. Marco?
The point was the gap in attention the handball suffers from in the media compared to football can be made smaller if handball, I would say, are willing to invest in pictures and images and distribute them more than now.
David?
My question was, in 5 years, I would like the European handball to be recognized as maybe a role model for other market participants, being an important stakeholder of this media entertainment landscape.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to all participants. Thank you, David. Thank you, Sasha. Thank you, Xavi. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Marco. So we're going into a short break now. Time for a coffee, time for networking. If you haven't said hello to your neighbor, please use the opportunity to do so. And we'll be back for panel 2 in 15 minutes. Thank you.
Then you go and follow me around. Oh babe, follow you down. Then you go and follow me around. I keep myself in and out, not fall asleep, dropping around. I follow you where you are. If my eyes fall apart, then you go and follow me around. Oh babe, I follow you down. Then you go and follow me around. Your eyes are shining in my soul. Everywhere I wanna go. It didn't take me very long. Had you sitting there, spinning there in me, in my soul. Babe, follow you down. Then you go, follow me around. Oh babe, follow you down. Then you go, follow me around.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the second session of our European Handball Talks. I would like to come back to the session before, and first of all, many thanks to the experts, and I think their contributions are valuable for us. I can say that it's not by chance that we listened to them. We identified all the issues a couple of years ago, and as well the tender process, as our current activities are directly targeting all these challenges we have. So it's no problem for us to digest. It's not a major surprise. It's the right recommendation, it's the right statements, and it will be part of our doing in the future. Coming to the second part, yes, we want to be more professional. Handball has changed within the last at least 10 years. I very well remember the 1994 European Championship. I very well remember the first year of the Champions Leagues and the finals at the time. And this was excellent handball, good players, nice surrounding, good friendship, but we were far away from any business relation. And within the last decade, and it's not by chance that we are celebrating 10 years EHF Final4 here. It turned out that there are possibilities for this sport. The first major European championship was in 2010, not regarding the quality of the teams. We have seen very good championships before, but it was the first championship where independent from the success of the host, this was in Austria, and Austria was around, I think, 9 or 10s or 11s. Independent from the success of the host, the venues were full because of our concepts, because of the investment into promotion. And since then, the Euros have developed in a very positive way. And looking to the figures of TV transmissions, markets we are covering, latest Women's Euro in France, 135 territories covered, it proves something. Same holds true for the club competitions, and maybe they even earlier started on their way with all the dialogues we had with the clubs and all the developments. We can nowadays see an average of 14 TV stations covering each individual Champions League match in Europe. I think it's a big step forward, and these successes on our both legs, the clubs and the national team competitions, also make us think that we have to invest into the future, that we have to work, and there are targets to reach. Part of our business is the involvement of the different stakeholders, and we have somehow managed in this environment, and many sports are suffering from that a small group of people is deciding about almost everything, which at the end of the day turned out is not even legally possible. Look to the Bosman case situation in football and many other decisions of the European Court. But it also hinders you to further develop your own products. And this is exactly what we have done within the last years, starting with the process with the clubs, involving the leagues, involving the players. And yes, there is potential on, I say, in every corner to go on further with this. In any case, we create the platforms, the discussions, and the previous statement of a group of experienced players to take care of their wishes and their interests. This is fine for us. We always worked in direction of involving the stakeholders, and we are happy that even the top players are ready now to go into a dialogue, which was not the case in the past. And therefore, we very much appreciate this dialogue, and we will have also now a session talking about the environment, mainly the environmental questions regarding our activities and the players. It's my responsibility to introduce the moderator of this session. This is Paul Bray. Paul Bray is a director of international governmental and PR in a US-based energy company. He's from Great Britain, but at the same time French, so he knows handball from every angle. He's chairman of the British Handball Association, trying to bring up handball there. And I got to know him as a commentator of top-level handball matches in Eurosport. I think it's more than 2,000 matches, and I forgot the number of World and European Championships and Olympic Games where he's doing the commentary. So he knows handball, being a former player and coach as well, and so he seems to be qualified to direct the next discussion. Please, Paul, take the floor.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you very much indeed, Michael. I hope themes doesn't become the operational word here. Some very interesting presentations so far. A very interesting panel discussion. Michael Rasmussen, no, you're wrong. You should be coming to London. It's a fantastic city, and we hope we can see you there. Now for this next session, which will be very much focused. It's professionalization in handball, but as Michael said, it is around the players and the people who actually deliver the very product that we've been talking about, which you can call it digital if you want, but at the end of the day, it is about what is happening on the court. We've got a great panel here today, so if I can first of all ask Michael Appelgren to join me. Michael is a professional handball player with Rhein-Neckar Löwen. Michael has won the Bundesliga twice and the German Cup once, and has made 82 appearances for Sweden.
What do you want?
Any way you like. You're first up.
Middle.
So, and is also, of course, silver medalist from the last European Championships. Next up, Martin Schwab, the TV expert who played from 1980 to 1998 for various German clubs and coached Hamburg and led Hamburg to the Champions League title in 2013 and then has been vice president but is now commentating. Very, very warm welcome, Martin. Next up, actually a very different perspective. It's Kamil Novak, who is Executive Director of FIBA Europe, the International Basketball Federation. Welcome, Kamil. He was also, as you may guess from the height, a professional player with various clubs in Europe and also played for Czechoslovakia and then the Czech Republic before managing a club not far from here, actually in Frankfurt. Then Michael Salah-Hansen, who is president of the European Handball Players Union, a former player himself. And he captained, in fact, FCK Copenhagen to the Danish title in 2008. And finally, Martin Hausleitner, who's the EHF Secretary General since August 2017 and was before that Secretary General of the Austrian Handball Federation. And we mentioned it earlier, was overseeing the organization of Euro 2010. Martin, very warm welcome to you. So this is our panel. So thank you very much indeed for joining us. We heard earlier about the challenges that the EHF faces in continually having to improve the offering and the package that they're putting out there and keep handball growing. However, one of the challenges that handball faces, as Michael alluded to, is this thorny issue of how to balance the growth and enhancement of the product with the demands on the very players who are delivering the product on court. Now, it's an issue that's been at the heart of many debates between the European Handball Federation and the European Handball Players Union. And as part of those efforts, in fact, the president of the European Union has since 2011 been sitting on the professional handball board of the European Handball Federation. But clearly there's a sense from the players that we're still not there and the solution hasn't quite been found yet in terms of finding the balance between enhancing the product and making sure that the players are not overworked. And in fact, earlier this year, the European Handball Players Union launched its Do Not Play the Player campaign, and one of the requests you had was to meet up with the European Handball Federation and take this discussion further, maybe outside of the board, and we can talk about that in a little while. So, Michael, I will come back to you a little bit later, but maybe, Michael, I'll start with you, as you're actually one of those players who is delivering the product at the moment. You're a player at the highest level, both with club and country, and I'd like to ask you really, what is your motivation in the sport, and what are the factors which you think are important in terms of developing the career of a top player in the current environment?
As you said, I'm a top player. I played last year both in German league, the Champions League, and with my national team. So I experienced this part of handball as well. I started out young, but I'm very proud to be here and very proud to be here today. Thank you for having me. What I think is important as a player to be at this level, I think it's in every career. I think determination, you have to have really disciplined and you have to sacrifice some things. And as a player as well, handball play, I think it's really cool because you can have Dennis Kristopan Vardar, he's 2.15 centimeters, or meters, so not so small. And you have also in this team Stas Skube, who is 1 meter and 76 centimeters tall. And you have these players are still playing in the back, but they are still delivering at the top handball player. And they also have a set of skills that they use to optimize to that talent. And I think that's also cool by handball. And you can see goalkeepers that are my size, or they have even bigger or even smaller, because you have to optimize your skill sets, do whatever you can, and therefore I like handball as well.
Thanks very much. I mean, you're a current player. Martin, you've had a long and very illustrious career with club and country, and then you managed Hamburg very successfully, and then you went into the management, and now on the commentary side. I mean, from your experience, you've witnessed a huge transformation in the sport. In fact, you were around in the days that Michael was referring to earlier, and this big transformation, both in terms of playing the rules of the game and the pace of the game, but also the development of the package itself and the Champions League and developing. I'd certainly like to hear what your perspective is then on the sport and where we are at the moment and the challenges that the players you see are facing, maybe compared to earlier times.
First of all, I'd like to say that I'm really proud to sit here. The second, I think we have a really, really good sport. Handball is, in its environment, strong, really strong enough, but I think we have to do a lot of things in the future to getting stronger. What I'd like to say is that we have to sit together. We have to speak together about this, what we are doing for the future. And not only the players or not only the coaches, also the AHF, the IHF, and all these competence have to go together to make a good decision for the next few years. I think we have a big chance when we speak together.
So it's interesting because a fair amount is being done already to try and grow the stakeholder group, but clearly you seem to be saying actually bigger is still better. Because
bigger is still better, I think so. Because we have a lot of different and really difficult, we have to find a lot of solutions because it's a difficult, big, it's now the right word is not for me because I'm German, excuse me, but I think we need to go the way together. That's what I think.
Right. Thanks very much. And Camille, let me come to you. I mean, it's interesting because we've seen things happen in handball, talk about breakaway leagues even at one point, and of course in basketball, this experience has happened to you with the EuroLeague, and you've had quite a few challenges. What has been the effect of this breakaway league in terms of your association and their association on both the game itself, but also on the players and in terms of the international or national team calendar, but also club calendar? It must have been a big wrench.
Well, the impact is actually very simple, that the top clubs, the EuroLeague, after we changed the calendar a few years ago, they do not release always the players for the national teams. And obviously, we knew about that risk, even though we were assured that it is not going to happen. It did happen. The impact is that in some games, in the windows, the players would come, in some they would not come because the EuroLeague is scheduling their games. And obviously, we want to grow. We are very open to any kind of compromise, to any kind of communication. It does not really does not really happen so far. It is not pleasant. Nevertheless, the qualifiers for the World Cup just ended up some months ago. We are ahead of the World Cup, and I'm very sure already now, seeing all what happened in China, it's going to be by far the biggest World Cup ever. And we will also have the top players playing there. So obviously our challenge is now, because in November we will start the qualification for the Eurobasket 2021, to improve and to have more players playing in the qualifiers. But this is more of the role of the national federations, to be very honest. I mean, we've been trying to support as much as we can, but this is about the national federations. But we are going then further to the European sports model, which is now at stake, not only in basketball. The other sports will follow. You all know probably about the football situation. They are discussing more or less the same what we have in the basketball. So this is going to be a global challenge, I mean, Europe-wise.
And the breakaway of the EuroLeague, as a matter of interest, was that driven by concerns over the pressures on the players, or was it driven by a different marketing mindset and feeling that they wanted to offer a different package?
Well, the breakaway happened actually, I think it was in the year 2000, so it was way before I was involved. I do obviously know the details. It was more, I would say, financially, or the motivation was rather on that side. Today, we have a situation where the top players, and they are vocal, they started to complain because EuroLeague is actually, they play a league system with 34 games in the regular season plus the playoffs, plus the players have the same in their national championships. So we are talking already about 80, 90 games without the national team games. So obviously we would come to 100, 110 games, which is absolutely too much. On our side, what we did, we did change our competition system. We want to save the players, that's how we call it. We don't want to overplay them. So we made sure that the national team players have every summer 5 weeks off. That is for everybody, unless the clubs decides otherwise. But from our side, there is every summer 5 weeks off for every player. We do have every 4 years in the Olympic cycle, we have one summer with no national team activities. So we've already done a lot in order to protect the players because the game, obviously it is about marketing, finances, this and that, but at the end of the day, it is the player or the players who perform and who build the product.
I mean, we talked about the number of games, Mikael, if I can come back to you, and we talked a little bit earlier. I mean, you played an incredible amount of matches. I mean, how many did you reckon you were playing?
Like 90, 95, maybe with the friendlies as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot, because obviously you're playing in the Bundesliga, you've had the Cup, you've had the Champions League, you've had the European Championships, the World Championships, the European qualifiers. It's a lot.
Yeah.
So, yes?
Yeah, talking about that, is my motivation as well to be, I think everyone here wants to make this fantastic sport of handball even better. And that's also why I think it's really important that we players also got to say, to be able to impact the decision making. And I find it, from my personal experience, this don't play the players. It's also for me, I came to last year, I experienced when the European Handball Federation, the German Handball Federation, and my own club, High-calibre, couldn't agree when to play the Bundesliga game against Kiel, and the first lost 16 in Champions League against Kielce, and we had to play on the same day. Then we had one game at 4 o'clock and one game at 6 o'clock on the same day. So it was quite hard to make that traveling and stuff. So, I mean, that for me
was an exception, but it's still quite extreme.
But me as a player, I really want to play both.
Yes.
I would cut myself in half to go there and go there.
Yeah.
But also to make a player also have a say in it. I think because now the decisions were made without I didn't have a chance or can go to Mikael and have this, can you do something about it? Yeah. I think it's really important.
And you'd be in a tough situation, of course, in the basketball environment where some of them are not even releasing their players to play for the national team. You'd probably feel quite bad being told, well, sorry, but you can't play for Sweden because I want to keep you here fresh for the next game. But it is still that balance. And on that subject, and coming back to the earlier request that you had then, Michael, as the president of the European Handball Players Union, can you describe the situation then on a European scale and maybe also the functions and tasks of your union, and also how your relationship has been, because you also sit then on the EHF professional board, and so that is an opportunity at least for a dialogue directly with the EHF. So I'd certainly like to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, and first of all, would like to say and underline that we are very satisfied with the collaboration in the Professional Handball Board and the job we're doing together with the stakeholders in handball in connection to the European Handball Federation. What the EHF are doing around good governance and all these kind of things, they are now we have been talking about being a role model in the other section. The EHF is also a role model from other sports also in this connection. So we have a very good collaboration. But to talk about what our tasks are from EPO in short terms, it's that we will go to the locker room. We will have the feedback from the players about their workload, about their contracts, and so on. And we will take this from the locker room and put this on the agenda in the decision-making bodies on a national and on an international level, and also to bring information back to the players from, you can say, what the decision-making parties are agreeing on and so on, because it's very important that it's not my opinion that's out there, it's the players. That's the main task, but we also help players regarding contracts, protecting their image rights, making insurances, and so on. So there's a lot of tasks, and yeah.
And the challenge there is, I guess, that for the players, it's important for them to be part of a successful package that delivers to the highest level. But equally with that comes the extra demand, and it's juggling that. And I know when you took on the job, which you took on only at the beginning of this year, with the European Federation, but of course with the European Union, but you have been a director of the Danish Union for quite a while. But I guess that must be one of those challenges where the players say, well, don't weaken the package, on the other hand, because it's less marketable, it's not so good for us. But equally, still the demands need to be managed somehow so that we are fresh, because the last thing you want, I guess, is a situation like you sometimes have in football. We've seen it in England, with the Premiership and the Champions League, where a team puts out a B team for a cup game because the Champions League's just around the corner, and they decide to do that, and we don't want that. And I'm sure the spectators wouldn't want to see a second-string High-calibre team. They'd want to see Mikael come out on court, not to put any of the other players down, but really you want the best team all the time. But it's difficult to put it there.
Yeah, this campaign is also made to have the best players playing the World Championship and playing the European Championship, as long as they are good enough to be in the national team. We've just heard the story from basketball, and it's our fear that it will end up one day, because the pressure on the players will be too much, and then they will say, okay, I will step down from the national team. But we like to have the players in the national teams this is the best for the product, as long as they're good enough to be there.
So Martin, we're talking here about the relationship between, in this particular instance, the EHF. It could be other governing bodies, but the EHF and your relationship. And we've talked about the fact that the European Handball Players Union sits on one of your bodies. But having experience also from the past in working with the Austrian Handball Federation and dealing with national team players, how do you see the development from the EHF perspective then, regarding the calendar and the match system and so on?
Yeah, when I'm sitting here, I'm also representing the professional staff of the European Handball Federation. And we have, in our office, we have a winner of Olympic medals, former players from the German Bundesliga, a lot of national team players. So in the EHF office, there are not sitting some desk murders with just a pencil and the calendar, and we do it like that. This is a Sunday, let's play. No, there is really a lot of experience there, and we are happy that we have our structure since 2008. The players are involved in professional handball and in the professional handball board. And of course, things grow over the time. As we heard today, in 2000, nobody was interested in any marketing or a presentation of the game. We still played. Then a lot of parties came in and developed a product. In the middle, still the player, which we see in the office as the artist of our game, and who has to be protected, of course. And in this development, of course, the interests were not coordinated. This is one thing we have to admit. Having the chance now with the new cooperation for the next 10 years, I think we took this chance and a lot of things were developed. We started our talks where every stakeholder was sitting on a table, developed a new calendar. And this new calendar, harmonized calendar, offers a lot of opportunities for all stakeholders to present their product, to reduce the workload for the players. For example, we reduced 1 week of national team activities. We have fixed match days, which was a request from the European leagues. So we will play the international games during the week. We have the national leagues on the weekend. We have a fixed end of all leagues in the respective federations, and we have a highlight event with the Champions League Final4 in the middle of June. And then really for every player, holidays and leisure time is safeguarded and secured. And I think taking these measures into consideration, we have reached major steps already now. Of course, we have to prove this system, we have to check the system if it's working. But right at the moment, we have an agreement with everybody and think this is a major step in the future of our sport.
And safeguarding you're talking about safeguarding the break. This is part of a number of steps that have been discussed, and I'm mindful, Michael, that you joined obviously the start of this year, but will have been familiar with the discussions because of your role with the Danish union. But you see these as all positive steps that are coming out. This is going in the right direction, but still not quite there.
Yeah, definitely. As I said before, we have nothing to complain about the collaboration and the way the players are heard in the European Handball Federation. We have other tasks than the European Handball Federation, and players want also to be involved in when you change the rules of the games. You can take the 7 against 6 rule. Many players from where I'm coming is against this one, but as a matter of fact, no players were really involved in this process. And some of the players have been very on this topic to say, we need to be involved, we need to be heard about this, also about helping the referees, give them better conditions, because it's very difficult to be a referee in the handball. So there's many issues here, and of course this process with the think tank in Croatia, it has been a good way, and also with fixed match days and so on. I think it's a step in the right direction. Yeah, but of course we have still issues about the workload. Yeah.
7 against 6 is probably a whole debate all on its own, so we won't get into that one at this particular point. But for a second general question for all of you, I'd like to ask then, and this is coming back to the original subject then, what do you see as the opportunities and the challenges in the competitions environment, both at club and national team level, to progress the sport to the next level and keep improving the package, whilst also trying to safeguard the players and making sure that they are still able to deliver at peak performance. So it's a slightly similar question, but maybe we're trying to hone in on the issue now of the demands on the players. I mean, Martin, do you want to kick us off on this one?
Yeah, I think that the players are able to play 80 or 90 games each year. I think a goalkeeper can play 120. Not 140.
Maybe not 7 against 6.
They do nothing. But I think we play too long. For me, handball is a bad weather sport. I think we should start the season a little bit later, when it's possible, and to end it earlier in the year. And I think the players and the clubs can play 3 or 4 days a week. It's possible. It's like when we take a look at America, to the NBA, they play 82 or 84 in 82 plays, and they have a long distance from game to game, but they play only 8 months. I think that's what I think it's the best solution, because I'm from Hamburg. We have not so good weather, but even sometimes we have good weather. In August we start, and we played. I know it's 6 or 7 years ago. We played the second day against Kiel. And normally when Hamburg plays against Kiel, believe me, it was bam. No, we only had 8,000 or 9,000 people in the Barclaycard Arena. So nobody wants to see handball when it's 28 degrees. Okay, tomorrow it's 28 degrees. Okay, but I think it's too warm. I think we have to play in October, November, December, January, February. We have to play. And I think it's possible for the players to play 80 or 90 games.
So how would you feel about that, Mikael, if we said, well, play the same amount of games in a more condensed calendar
with a
good
summer break? You need a good summer break.
Yeah,
you would need that.
Of course, it's we do it from time to time to play 3-4 games a week, but then also we have to see, we compare us with America, and they have they don't sit 10 hours in a bus. They don't sit. they don't have to take 3 flights to a destination. They have charters. They go from point A to point B, and then they're home. They can recover, and I also think those parts have to be at place as well. Then, if we're going to do this, yeah, maybe we can in the future get also this, but then we have to have every stone at place, I think.
But don't you think you need a longer summer break?
Of course, of course.
Because that was the point you said with basketball, that they have the long break.
But please, here is one important thing. If you look at the NBA, and the NBA is a big brand, it's a fantastic organization, but it was already mentioned that nobody's taking a bus or nobody's taking a regular flight. This is all charter flight. That's just the beginning, but there are other aspects as well. In the NBA, the break is longer but everything is regulated, so they are not allowed to practice together. But every player would have an individual coach or coaching staff, because I discussed many times with Dirk Nowitzki, and he said the times is past that you are doing holiday for 3 months or 4 months. It doesn't exist. The top players and actually all the players there, because obviously the salaries are high, but also everybody wants to play, so they would take care of themselves. They would have their own staff, they would pay them, and they would do individual practices. Everything is regulated, and the players, they do care about themselves. And this is in Europe, it's a little bit different. I would agree that the players should play around 80, 90 games, including the national teams, not more than this. I would agree that 3 games in the week should be normal. That's what you have. You have on the weekends, you have the national championships, and in the week you would have 1 game of the international competition. This is all possible, all very normal. Players also have to understand, because I remember still a little bit that when I was player, you are just looking at the salaries. You would like to have higher salary, but you have to also understand as a player that the money must come somewhere, and it is not coming from the sky. So the money must be generated, and obviously it's a product, so the players need to play. So it's about to find the right balance, how many games, and not to overplay the players. So this will be more or less the challenge for the upcoming years, not only for handball, it's in the basketball, it's the same. But again, if you look at the US sports model, it's a little bit different. The deeper you go, the more differences you see in the US sports model. It's in Europe, it's a little bit different.
Yeah. Michael, you had a point.
Yeah, first of all, you need to be aware of comparison with other sports, because you have to have a work analysis of each sport. And now we're talking about the NBA. The NBA have no national team competitions. They only have the NBA to deliver in. The handball players, they have their national competition, they have their competition on the international level, World Championship, and so on. So there are many other stakeholders for the handball players to respond to. They will have a training program from the national coach, and they will have one from Martin. And then sometimes they will collide, because the team wants to have the best players to be best in the end of the season. The national teams want to have the players to be best when they are on vacation. And that's a big mix for the players. And it's a difficult task to solve by sitting here and so on. But that's the problem from the player side. And in handball, we have to look, as you talked about in the previous debate, that the national teams are the one who is taking carriage of all the media interest, because it's not the same way in basketball. It's the NBA. Then you don't talk about the World Championship on the same level as you do in handball. The European Championship and the World Championship are the competitions you talk about mostly, and with the most spectators and so on in handball. So there's big differences from my point of view on this.
Yeah. And I guess, Martin, the challenge for the European Handball Federation is that some of these discussions would need to be with national federations. You can adjust the international windows up to a point, but if you want to shorten the amount of times that players are released to national teams, or shorten leagues, or shorten the Champions League season.
I think we have heard a lot of arguments from club perspective and from national team perspective. Also the big problem that we have 2-cycle training for the normal players in the league, and the 1-cycle training for the national team players, because they have not the opportunity to have a second preparation time in January. But this is what we also have to take in consideration. That we have to improve our environment when it comes to scientific medical care. We know from other sports that they invest a lot of money in medical care and to have their players ready. If we now, through the new cooperation, give more money to the system, it has to be invested, for example, as mentioned already, in travel. We have, for example, obliged the organizers of the Euros from 2020 onwards to provide the teams with charter flights from the preliminary round to the main round, so that we do not accept any bus travel over 4 hours any longer, because we know this is rest time for the players, and if they want to perform on the highest level, it is us, it's the officials in the clubs, in the federations, in the leagues, to offer them an environment where they can perform and we do not damage it. We know a lot about scientific approaches, so we know, for example, that a guy who is sitting for 6 hours in a bus needs 6 hours to get his full capacity again. So we know this, and we act against it. So I see a lot of potential to deliver this knowledge also to the clubs, and we stick to that and not find the cheapest solution. But yes, we have to invest in our environment.
Yeah. And all the more important when some of these European championships are now split between 3 countries and so on. I mean, in some cases flights are essentials, but sometimes you could still drive. Can I come back to you, Michael, and that original question then about these opportunities and the challenges you think that we face in terms of balancing the product and the development of the product and the players, because you're at the sharp end of it.
Yeah, of course. I heard also a lot of interesting arguments with branding and the players, and now we talk about the workload, and I think there are a lot of things that we as a sport also can do better and be even bigger. I think, like you told before, that the stars should really be big stars, and for that I also hope that branding also players with firms. I mean, like VELUX, biggest window company, and you can have Mikkel Hansen opening the window and it blows up his hair, and I mean, there's great things to do there, I think, as well. And I see also handball as a positive factor in the future, and I think that when we stop up and take these talks, and like I said before, that we players also have a word to say and to lift our arguments, I think this could be really good.
Would you like to see the debate go beyond just the inclusion of the European Handball Players Union with the EHF? Do you see another level of discussion needing to take place, or which would involve the union, but maybe at a different discussion?
I think this is a good start. I think we're sitting here today, and I think that we can furthermore talk and that we also have the players organized under the unions, and that we can have our values and our thoughts also through our organized unions to the EHF and the EHF and to the leagues as well.
Yeah. Can I jump to you, Michael? I mean, do you see any other challenges, and what would you see to this proposal of another layer? Do you think it's just more work? Actually, you're trying to achieve the same already. You've talked about the good relationship and the fact that things are going well with the discussions of the EHF, but.
Yeah, but again, to solve some of these problems, you need to talk to every stakeholders, because if you make a change in one place, it affects the other ones, and that's the what you could call it, the Gothic nub of this handball. About if you, for example, take the Olympic Games. The federation don't earn really money from this, because it's the IOC who get the revenue from there, basically. The players want to go there. So if you should get rid of a tournament, the federation could say, okay, don't you go to the Olympics, it's fine for us. But the players will say, oh, no, please don't touch the Olympics. We want to be at the Olympics because it's the most honorable medal to have, and so on. And so on, there's many conflicts, and you cannot just have a chat with one stakeholder. You need to find a solution. And of course, the players cannot have the 100% of their demands. The club should not have, and the federation. So we have to find a good balance. And was I was talking about before, I think we have a very good climber and debate with the stakeholders in the Professional Handball Board. And this is the way to solve this. This should be done on a more global way, you could say.
So you're talking about evolution rather than change in terms of the relationship as it is now, and because you're already representing the players effectively. So I guess it's more whether you want to have more dialogue on one side on a specific subject to bring to the table, or whether you bring some of the players. I mean, that's kind of your role anyway. But.
Yeah, because of course there are things to be to be changed on the short run, but also on the long run. As we've been talking about, the way the Danish team and the German team had the home advantage in the last World Championship, with a rest day between each match. It was not fair, even though I'm from Denmark and the Danish, we were very glad about it, but it was not fair that the Norwegian team and all the other team, some of them had 3 matches in 5 days. It should not be like this, but this is a thing that we think that the European Handball Federation and the IHF should say, this is not the way to play. It needs to be equal for each team. There should be not such big a home advantage than the public are doing on the stands.
Michael, can I come to you? And we're still a little bit on the same in terms of the opportunities and challenges, but maybe a comment on Michael, who's saying evolution, not change, but there is still a situation where a lot of the time we're reactive. That something goes wrong and then you're fixing it, but maybe an earlier discussion might have avoided the situation. Did you see how you get around that? Because the danger is then you need to have the union almost involved in every aspect of organization of the European or maybe the International Handball Federation. But maybe that is the way that it needs to be.
I have the feeling that having the union as a translator between the players and the governing body is necessary, because what we learned from, for example, from communication, players are reacting on a WhatsApp, and our business is not, we cannot describe our business in a WhatsApp. So sometimes it's a very simple point of view, understandable, because this is the only perspective, and we have a much more complicated business. So we try to produce the best product, to bring to have our state in the entertainment business, as we heard before, to bring money into the system, which the players like, obviously, and which they earn. And we are doing mistakes, of course. Everybody is not perfect, we are not perfect, and we are developing. And important is that we are staying on the table. And we were not happy about the Don't Play the Players campaign, but we are dealing with it. And yes, it was a good occasion and to talk about handball again, and we are not disappointed. No, it was a next occasion to make handball a topic, to give the players a voice. What are we going to do? Talk further, put all our plans on the table. Let's have a look on it from all the stakeholders, from the federation, from the clubs, from the players' side. We have to create attractive tournaments, attractive competitions as we have here. We considered how to make the Champions League Final Four even more attractive. And the thing was to put it to the end of the season, not having the German Bundesliga playing on the same weekend, or other leagues, not only the German Bundesliga. Other leagues are playing on this weekend. This cannot be the most attractive product we deliver if this is the case. So put it to the end of the season, for example. We work from day to day. We have new ideas. We try to talk about it. We invite the players even to come to Vienna, to look into this house where decisions are made or prepared. And this is our approach to solve problems and make the product even more attractive.
So it's evolving, Mikael. I mean, is that the kind of situation you'd like to see expanded going forwards in terms of the involvement and taking all the stakeholders' views?
Of course, and we, as I said before, we want to make this fantastic sport better and just have that climate and to help each other out, and that we can have all the voices, all the stakeholders, is that direction we want to go.
And Martin, you were nodding just there. Same with you?
Yeah, I think
we know that. Be the way I mean, it sounds great, the danger you can
know that
is a big
it's a lot of different problems to solve, but I think we need a solution. We need to go together one way, and
but that's maybe part of the solution.
That sounds great for me. It sounds great.
Yeah,
let's start it.
I think it's important to understand. I remember when I was with the club, sometimes I didn't understand what the international or national federation was doing. I mean, I didn't, and now vice versa. So I think it's important that the clubs do understand the national and international federations better and vice versa, because this is the business of the federations is different and the business in the club at the club level is also totally different. So this must be improved, and obviously to take always on the journey to take the players so that they understand why things are the way it's been decided. They might sometimes disagree, but they should always understand why decisions were taken this way and not that way. So I think the communication should be improved, and this is also a little bit the challenge for the upcoming years, because we all compete, basketball, handball, whatever sports, we all compete actually, and it was said in the discussion before, it's about we compete for the time of the consumers. So, you know, we have many similarities in your sports, in my sports, and the other sports are more or less the same. And it's about to find a compromise and to find a balance between the federations, clubs, and obviously the players, so that everybody feels a little bit comfortable in the decisions.
Thanks very much. Well, great to have a perspective from another sport. The clock's gone red on me, so I think it's time for us to wrap up. It does sound like we've got a situation where you're playing a lot of games, you're probably at the limit, although some views are it's probably okay, but what you need to have is a guaranteed window when you can have a break and switch off. Next year might not be it with the Olympics, because that gives you another competition in the summer. But still, nominally, the EHF is working hard now to involve the stakeholders at an earlier stage to make some of these decisions and some of the planning of the events themselves. And that's going to be critical going forwards to avoid exactly the kind of breakaway where, ironically, those who broke away are probably desperate to come back now, because with 120 matches and a 10-year franchise, they're not going to be out of those games for a while. But it shows the importance of doing it early. And I get the sense, and certainly from what you were saying, Michael, that the dialogue is there and it's set to continue. And this was just really a short discussion to set the scene. But there's a lot more to come that's already being teed up by the European Handball Federation. So thank you very much indeed for your time. If I can just thank the panel very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much also from my side for this very, very interesting and insightful discussion. So with two panels being closed now, we come to the final part of today, and this is the awarding of the certificates of the successful participants of the European Handball Manager course. The European Handball Federation, together with the Sports University, the German Sports University of Cologne, has been for 4 years working closely together at this project. It's the 4th course, the 2nd that's been conducted in English. And after I've said thank you again, and I'd like the gentleman to leave the stage.
Thank you very much.
And
okay, danke.
Then who could be better fitted to have a short introductory speech than EHF Honorary President and the former President of the University of Rennes, Jean Brieux, whom I'd like to welcome on stage now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, when you listen to all these ideas that were expressed this afternoon, you realize that you've got someone to think about the future, to connect all the protagonists in the sport, to think of the stakeholders outside the sport. And this person is a kind of pivot in the life of sport. And this person has to manage the contradictions, the articulation between the past and the future. And this is why we educate handball managers in Europe. We all know that handball, from the beginning in Europe, has been strongly connected to the world of education. So it's no wonder that when the EHF was founded, immediately courses were established. First, I think, for referees and delegates, soon enough for coaches. At that stage of the evolution of education, there was something slightly incestuous in the process. Former referees were educating referees, old referees as well were educating delegates, because we didn't have old delegates. And though some people think that things are fine so long as incest remains inside the family, this was not the point of view adopted by the EHF. And we went into, you see, I still say we, and I shall continue because I enjoy it so much. We went into a second phase. And people like František Taborski, the then chairman of the Methods Commission, Michael Wiedera, the then Secretary General, and Helmut Hörig, had a reflection. And we decided that we needed people who were not only teachers, but people who were also awakeners. This is a distinction that was established by American poet Robert Frost, but he was also an educationalist and is not remembered as an educationalist because he's so famous as a poet. And he drew this distinction between teachers and awakeners. This is when the Union of University Handball Teachers was established, when the scientific conferences were established, when a vast network of competence was set up. And a third stage was reached when the Professional Handball Board, which we just heard about, was founded. Some people at the time when we were fighting to establish a Professional Handball Board were very hostile. They said, well, they just want to stick their big fingers into the jam pot. Maybe this was part of the truth, but it was not the main part of the truth. The main part of the truth was that they wanted to be involved, they wanted to cooperate. And they came up with their first request, even demand, threatening us. What did they want? They wanted an educational program for club managers. And Gert Butzek was behind that request, together at the time with Joan Marin, another Catalan whom we liked very much, beside Xavier O'Callaghan. So we said, yes, a fantastic idea. It's in everybody's interest that our managers should be better educated. Believe it or not, we immediately had a tremendous protest from the representatives of the nations. Why? Because they wanted the same. They wanted the same for their own people. So this is a success story. And as we needed awakeners and not only teachers, we connected with the German Sport University in Cologne. And with them, we found the perfect partners. And I really want to sincerely thank them on behalf of the EHF, though it's not my role to do so, but you cannot control me when I'm on stage. And the program established is customized, that is, it takes into account the requests of the handball world, of the EHF, but it is not based on concessions made on a request. And these people manage to transform, and this is another quotation which I like, to transform cocky ignorance into miserable uncertainty. And this is by Mark Twain. And this means that when you receive an appropriate education, you lose your certainty, but you're able to problematize situations, to have an intellectual reflection on the situation you're confronted with, and to find answers that do not correspond to the past, but that correspond to the future. So it's a great pleasure for me to congratulate all the candidates and to thank very sincerely the Sport University of Cologne. So I think that now, ladies and gentlemen, we should call on stage those awarding and those receiving the diplomas that are going to be delivered today. Thomas, can you tell me who is going to join me to award?
I think Stefan will join you on stage. You won't be alone.
I hope so. So this is what, like the awarding of the medals at the end of a competition. Either I turn my back on you, or they turn their back on you. It's better if you see their faces, and if Stefan and myself, we stand on the side and like this. Yes. Yeah, I'll give you the microphone.
So the first candidate is Stanislav Belinsky. Congratulations, Stan. From Sweden, Patrick Bengtsson.
Congratulations.
From the European Handball Federation, Vladislav Brinchak. From Portugal, Conchalo Carvalho. From the United Kingdom, Bayana Diallo. Nikola Eklemovic. The second person from Sweden, Hanna Fogelström. The third Swedish person who successfully participated, Henrik Frosberg. The next successful graduate, Ivana Jelic. The first successful candidate from overseas, from Australia, Kirsten Lange.
From Australia?
From Luxembourg, Sylvester Lischkai. Then we have the next one, Nikolai Luka. Now we have the first American European handball manager, John Ryan. And this is a very unknown situation that the manager of the Veszprem team, so one of the participant teams, successfully graduated, Scholt Sevinger. Then the Women's Champions League winner, Thomas Szabo from Hungary. And the sixth graduate of the European Handball Manager course this year, Vasil Vima. I think it's a good academic tradition that we would like to use this opportunity also for running excellence performance. And there's always one candidate per year which receive a special prize for this excellent performance. And this year we had 7 out of the 16 participants who passed the written and oral exam with high distinction. And considering the grade of the written and oral exam, we would like to remit the Certificate of Honor for Excellent Performance to Ivana Jelic. Finally, I would like to take the opportunity to thank you. Wonderful class. I really enjoyed the time. I get so many positive feedback also from the lectures, from the team behind me who helped and support me. And that's also why I'd like to express my gratitude to the lecturers, some of them in the audience, but also to the team behind me who support me and make this possible on the European Handball Federation, but also Forum Club Handball, etc. And thank you also for having this opportunity here to take the certificates here to the graduates. I think it's now time for a group picture here on the stage and celebrate the success tonight and on the weekend. Look at the guy over there, yeah, just...
Thank you very much, and also congratulations from my side here to the new European Handball managers. Famous last words, use the time for networking. There are shuttles taking you back to the Lanxess Arena just after 6 o'clock. At 7 o'clock, the opening party will start. Don't miss the unveiling of the Ball of Fame just outside Lanxess Arena. And at 7:30, we have the VIP VELUX reception story for you. Thank you very much for joining the European Handball Talks today, and enjoy the VELUX EHF Final 4. Thank you.
Follow you down. Let it go, follow me around. Oh babe, follow you down. Let it go, follow me around. I keep myself in and out, not fall asleep, dropping around. I follow you where you are. If my eyes fall apart, oh babe, follow you down. Then you go, follow me around. Oh babe, follow you down. Then you go, follow me around. Your eyes are shining in my soul. just sitting there, spinning there in me, in my soul.